Hello and welcome. The lockout the lockdown on the Indian economy is supposed to, and the country is supposed to lift on the 3rd of May. Whether it will and in what way across how many states and cities is something that we have to see. But more importantly, restarting the economy as it should after that is not going to be a simple one. One of the key questions in restarting the economy, or a question that has to be answered, is how many people can be tested in order to know how the disease is spreading, has spread, or likely to spread. And that's a question that is obviously challenging not just those on the front lines of medicine, but also on or economists of many kinds in this country. One of them is Dr. Ajay Shah at the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, and he just recently wrote a blog where he talked about the kinds of testing that we have, and what are the pathways that we could follow to perhaps best understand as we restart the economy and to reduce the concerns that the larger populace might have about how this is going to go. So Ajay, thank you very much for joining us. So there are two kinds of tests. As you wrote very clearly, there is the PCR test, which looks for the virus in the body, and there is the antibody test, which tests for the presence of antibodies which fight the virus in the body. Now, the way they appear or they can be tested happen at slightly different times. But from here on, we have to understand now which is more effective and how do we best understand how a disease is spreading or has spread already.
So there are two different tests and they have interesting and different interpretations. The PCR test says that the virus is present inside you right now. Okay, and it is, of course, extremely important in a clinical setting. If you were a doctor and I was a patient, we very much want to know, is this COVID-19? And we want to know, is it present right now? And a great deal of the testing that has been done in India so far is derived from this clinical setting, that a person goes to a doctor, the doctor feels maybe there's something going on here, and the doctor asks for a PCR test for whether the virus is actually present. A different line of attack in testing is the so-called serological tests, which look for antibodies. These show positive results at the end of the infection, so they're not very useful in a clinical setting, but they're actually extremely interesting from an information point of view, because it kind of says that, have you had this disease in the past? So we will identify people who have maybe not even experienced any symptoms, who may have never approached a doctor, but who have finished with the disease and developed antibodies. They are likely to be immune to this disease. So these are the two different kinds of tests. Right. And just to complete this little loop, we also have to keep in mind that the PCR test is expensive and difficult to execute correctly. It requires proper storage of samples and so on. And the antibody test is easier to roll out in the field. So these are two more factors that we have to keep in mind that when we think of these two kinds of testing.
Right, but what we're using right now is mostly the PCR test?
Yeah, so the bulk of the testing that has been done in India so far has been in the clinical context. That somebody went to a doctor and said, I'm not feeling good. And the doctor looked at the symptoms and said, this could be COVID-19, and sent them out to get a test. And that was generally a PCR test. So right. That's important, but it's PCR testing done in a clinical context. It's not a measure of what's going on in the country.
Right. Now, as we try and understand what it will take to restart an economy, we have to obviously understand how many people are likely affected, likely to get affected, how the disease is spreading, where it's spreading, and you have some thoughts along that path. So tell us.
Yeah. So the first is there is a conventional data set, which is how many people were tested, because some doctor asked that the test should be done, and how many of them have tested positive. That's category one. It is data that is collected in a clinical setting. And I wish to argue that there are actually three other kinds of data sets that are extremely important that need to be created. Let's run through each of them. So imagine I'm a public health official and I'm nervous about one particular village or one particular neighborhood, one particular locality, one particular housing complex. I'm thinking that maybe there is an outbreak that is going on here. So I would like to have a measure about the neighborhood. I'm not interested in individuals. I want to know, in this neighborhood, is there a problem? there is a very neat trick that can be done. You can pool the data from, you can pool the nasal swabs from roughly 10 people and do a pooled PCR test. So the idea is that you will only utilize 1/10 of the testing resource because you're only spending one PCR test for each 10 people. So imagine that if there is one housing colony in which you feel uncomfortable, imagine we could take a random sample of 50 people and do 10 pooled PCR tests. So we would expend only 5 test kits and we would get a measure about whether the disease is present. We're not interested in identifying individuals, but we would get a hang about what's going on in that neighborhood. So this is category 2. You want to test a neighborhood. I'll give you an example. We will want to systematically test healthcare workers. We will want to test employees at a railway station. We will want to test policemen. We will want to test employees at airports. So for example, one would want to get a readout of what is going on at the Bombay VT terminal every day. So every day we should take a random sample of the employees at Victoria terminal and do a pooled PCR test, and we understand, is there COVID-19 in them or not? We're not interested in the individuals. We're interested in VT station. Okay, so this is category 2.
Right.
And this is a public health official interested in a question about a neighborhood. And there you want to take a random sample of that neighborhood and do a pool. Category 3 is an extremely important, very simple idea. Please go out into the population, take a random sample of individuals and measure them. So we should do the PCR test to know, are you presently infected? And we should also do the antibody test to know, have you had this in the past? Are you probably already immune? So I would want to see about 1,000 people in Bombay who are randomly sampled every week. So every week we should go take a random sample of Bombay, and that will give us guidance about the progress of the disease. The conventional data just does not tell us what proportion of Bombay is infected, has finished with the disease, and so on. So we need this so-called panel data where every week you take 1,000 people in Bombay. Every week you take 1,000 people in Delhi. This is the real data about what is the state of infection and immunity in Delhi, in Goa, in Rajasthan. So that is the category 3 test. And the category 4 testing strategy is just to go all out with lots of antibody testing all over India, driven by an individual. So imagine I am an individual. I am a Swiggy delivery guy. Maybe I'm Swiggy Corporation and I'm concerned about what's going on with my employees. Maybe I'm an individual. I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling uncomfortable. I should have easy access to subsidized antibody testing. So that way I just get peace of mind. Like, look, all of us have a chance of encountering this. By the time we are done, about 50-60% of India is going to be infected with this. And some professions, some people are more exposed than others. It's anxiety, it's concern that where am I, what's going on? And the antibody tests are not very expensive. So I feel that there should be large-scale access to a very bottom-up testing procedure that, look, if you feel nervous, there should be some subsidized way in which I can go get an antibody test. And, different people will choose, do I want to get tested or not, depending on their threat perception. Have I been in some neighborhoods where there were other people who were sick? Am I in a profession which has more frontline access? And so on. So lots of people should be able to weave testing into their life. That if I feel nervous about the world, I should test. It should be my individual agency. I should decide that I want to get tested. So these are the 4 strategies of testing. One is a clinical care setting. Second is a public health official looking at an airport, a neighborhood, a railway station. The third is systematic panel measurement. And the fourth is a bottom-up individual-driven desire to know more about what is happening to me. These are 4 strategies of testing.
Right. And this is also in some ways begun chronologically, right? So we're already seeing the first, maybe a little bit of the second, and the third and fourth could come if obviously now as we go into lifting of lockdown, we look at how are we going to attack this on a sustained basis.
Yeah. So we're going to need lots of energy all over the system of many, many people thinking how to build the institutional and organizational capacity. See, one of the problems here is that the large fraction of testing capacity in India is frankly in the private sector. When is the last time you or I got a test done? We got it from a private lab. So we will need government contracting with private people, and we need many, many institutional and organizational arrangements to get these things done. And it's really a local government story. It should be done by the Bombay municipality, by the Delhi government, by the Kerala government, by the Cochin municipality. We need a lot of energy in the system applying themselves to all these four strategies, saying, how do I do this?
Right, and if it, what you're saying also is that if it becomes part, and as it is becoming part of our lives, then the systemic responses, including, let's say, the testing laboratories, the private laboratories, will all have the infrastructure at an affordable cost for all of us to go and get tested, by which time in any case a vaccine might be found.
Yeah, so we are all dreaming that there will be a day when a vaccine is found, but the thing is, today it is not here, and we've all got to design a lifestyle for that world. And let's not think that COVID-19 is gone on the 3rd of May. It's the nationwide lockdown that ends on the 3rd of May. COVID-19 is here, and we all need to design a lifestyle whereby we are more careful and we are more thoughtful and we are using better information. We are all making decisions. There are hundreds of decisions being made inside an organization, inside a municipality, inside a healthcare facility, and so on. So we should not think that there is any one single decision based on one fact. There are different data sets that are required for different decision makers in the country to be more thoughtful and more analytical.
Right. So this is a medical crisis and challenge first, and then comes the economic crisis and challenge. So we've talked about restarting the economy from a medical point of view and the testing point of view. Your thoughts on restarting the economy and the key challenges we face and how we should be responding or could be responding in the months ahead?
So I already alluded to it that we've got to do much more in local government. Each place is different. So each district, each city should be looking at public health trade-offs of what can I sacrifice, what is essential to my livelihood. There are subtle trade-offs of, do I want to keep going with this activity or do I just shut it down? We should not be thinking of blunt single rules that will apply for the whole country. India is vast and diverse. India is really a European Union. We are a giant 3.3 million square kilometer country. So, for example, in one district, people may think that the mandis are absolutely fundamental to the economy of this district. So we've got to get the mandis to work. But now let's figure out how to achieve greater hygiene in the working of the mandi. There may be another district which says, no, this is not an important part of our life. Our main livelihood, our main business activities are different. So we should give up on the mandis. We should just close down the mandis for 6 months and we should go do something else. These are local trade-offs. So some businesses, some areas of activity are rescuable using better hygiene and better social distancing procedures. Some things are not rescuable. These decisions are very local. They involve local negotiations. So some things you can say flatly for the whole country. I think we're pretty certain there should be no places of worship. There should be no weddings. There are some things we understand all over India. But the complexity of reopening the economy is really local questions. There are local conversations. There are local trade-offs. There are local discussions. Now, on top of that, in my opinion, what we're going to see all over India is a checkerboard pattern of different disease episodes and events happening in different parts of the country. So once again, there is a need of local data, local thinking, local response. That maybe my district will see an incipient flare-up. I need good data about my district. So all the 4 strategies of testing need to be there in my district. So then a municipal commissioner, a district collector, the local political leadership of the district of all parties need to come together, look at the data, and then think, do we need to go into a more extreme lockdown now because we are at the beginning of a disease surge? Think of it like a cyclone warning, that a cyclone warning has come. And then the local government looks at the satellite imagery, looks at the path of the cyclone, and then decides that, hey, guys, we need to shut down. We need to do ABCD. So think of a checkerboard map all over India where there'll be different stories of this disease. And we need local government to lead the way on the kind of social distancing procedures. Imagine there's a red, blue, green manual in Parbhani district, in Kolhapur district, saying based on local conditions, based on the local trade-offs of our livelihood, our activities, we will have a red manual, a blue manual, a green manual, and then the local leadership will look at the data on an ongoing basis and keep making decisions all through the year. I think that's the way we should think about reopening the economy. I also want to say that my friends in the private sector are often asking me, when will this end? When will this end? When will this end? You know, are we there yet? Are we finished with this? And the story I always want to tell them is that during the Second World War, there were German bombers going over London, and there is this irresistible imagery of people wearing a business suit, carrying a briefcase, walking on the street, going to work, while the bombers are going overhead and the bombs are going. I think that's the worldview we've got to bring to this. For 2 years, for 3 years, we're in a horrible world, and we've all got to, muster the endurance and the courage to carry on. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very brutal. But we're all in this. We're all in this together, and we've got to find our way through. There is no easy ending unless you get to a vaccine and you immunize the entire 1.3 billion people of India. But it's going to be hard. Look at how many years it took us to do the polio vaccination. So let's not think this stuff is ending soon. It's a slow, long battle.
Right, but and be that as it may, we should, as Ajay rightly said and very inspiringly put, pick up the briefcase and put on our suits and get back to life, which will not be as usual anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ajay. Nice talking to you, and great interacting with you as always.
Good. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.